Is Lightning Run overrated? No, but also yes, but also no. I'm gonna rank every coaster and give them my review. Every drop and every hill, every launch and every loop. Rate it 1 to 10 and then we'll do it all again. Gonna rank and review every coaster. What's going on, everybody? My name is Mario. This is a channel all about amusement park type stuff, but mostly coasters. And today in my never-ending journey to rank and review every single coaster I have ever been on, we're going to be talking about Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. But real quick, I just wanted to say thank you and welcome back to my subscribers. And to anybody that's not subscribed, you better subscribe, or else you'll get struck by lightning. Twice. But without any further ado, let's review. Now, Lightning Run is definitely not a statistically impressive coaster. It has a height of 100 feet, a top speed of 55 miles per hour, 0 inversions, a track length of 2,500 feet, and an okay ride duration of 40 seconds from the end of the lift to the start of the final brake run. Now, this is definitely not a large-scale coaster, but it does do a pretty good job of packing in thrills for the size that it is. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the off-ride aspects of this coaster. This coaster is located at the front of the park, and I'm pretty sure it's the only ride on the front half of Kentucky Kingdom, if that makes any sense. The park is kind of split in two halves. It has a road going down the middle of it, and I'm pretty sure this is the only coaster on the entrance half of the road. As far as appearance and theming goes, well, this ride really doesn't have much theming, aside from the relatively frequent lightning in the area, which the ride can't operate with. But in general, I think the ride does look really great. I really like the light blue and dark green color scheme that it has, and I like the sign that it has as well, so even though it doesn't have super cool theming, it does look nice. Now, from my recollection, this ride has pretty good operations, although I didn't go during the busiest time of year, so your experience might be different than mine. But one thing that I did really like that kind of falls into the same category as operations is the cubbies on the ride station. This ride has cubbies that have a sliding door, so one train has its own set of cubbies, the sliding door slides over, and then the next train has its own set of cubbies as well. Neither of which are accessible to the other train, and I love ride stations that do this. You don't have to pay for a locker if you have a bag, you can leave all your stuff off to the side and not worry about it getting stolen, so huge props there. But now let's talk about the on-ride experience. So getting on the ride, if you are a taller person, you might notice that the restraints, and more particularly the shin bars, are kind of uncomfortable. These restraints are very similar to RMC restraints, so if you find those uncomfortable, you'll likely find these uncomfortable as well. And I personally didn't have any problems with these, but again, as I said, if you're on the taller side, you might find them a little uncomfortable. But anyway, let's go through the layout. Now, this POV is from Kentucky Kingdom's YouTube channel, so make sure you go check it out if you want to watch the POV uninterrupted. I'll go ahead and link that in the description as well. Just keep in mind that this POV is of the ride running pretty slowly because this ride takes a decent amount of time to warm up. It definitely runs very slow in the morning, but fantastically well later in the day. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, pulling out of the station, you go straight into the lift hill, which isn't super fast, but it's a short ride, so it doesn't take you too long to get to the top. You crest over the lift, and you go down the first drop, which in the front row is just fine. In the back, it's fantastic. That's going to be another common theme throughout this ride. I feel like most of the forces are significantly better in the back, especially the airtime, and even more so on the first drop specifically. In the front row, you kind of just dangle over, but in the back row, you are getting pulled down very forcefully. I love this drop in the back row, but in the front, take it or leave it, honestly. So after that first drop, you turn up into a large airtime hill. This airtime moment, at least, is better in every row, but the back is definitely the strongest and most sustained. And especially when this thing is running fast, that airtime hill is phenomenal. Coming out of that, you pull into an overbank, which doesn't really offer much in the way of forces. It's more of just to guide you back into the super compact layout. Now, this leads us into what I kind of call the twister section, which consists of lots of turns and small airtime hills. And this is definitely where the ride running slow is the most noticeable. It's a bit of a, I don't want to say dead spot, it's still fun, but it's not nearly as exciting as it could or should be. And even when the ride is running fast, these are definitely not the strongest airtime moments on the ride. But with that being said, you do at least have good variety. It's fun to be twisting back and forth, and you do even have an off-axis airtime hill, which is fun. So it's not a bad section by any means. It just isn't as good as some of the other highlights of this ride. ride. So coming out of that twister section, you head into what is probably my favorite part of the ride. We have a couple of back-to-back S-bends with very quick, whippy transitions. And here you have great laterals, and the whippiness is just phenomenal. It's sort of comparable to Maverick's transitions right after the first drop, just not quite as intense, but it's definitely more intense than most transitions on any coaster. Super, super great, and probably my favorite part of the ride. It's so good. Now coming out of that, the ride is almost over. You hit the last set of elements, which is a finale of ejector airtime hills. Now this is a lot of other people's favorite part of the ride, but for me personally, I like more sustained airtime, and while these hills deliver phenomenal pops of ejector, they're just a little too abrupt for my liking, but still really good. And yet again, this is another part of the coaster where time of day can really make or break it, because as you can see in the POV, it's going pretty slow over those hills, but at that speed it is still delivering decent ejector. So I mean, you can imagine how strong the ejector is when it's running at full speed. Definitely some of the strongest airtime out there. Again, just too abrupt for my liking. So that's it. You hit the final brakes, turn back into the station, and then see you later. And overall, I think this is a great, solid, compact coaster that offers a lot in a little package. I definitely do think it is the tiniest bit overrated, and that's mostly just because I've heard people say that they prefer this over Storm Chaser, and in my opinion, I think Storm Chaser is significantly better. But hey, that's just me. Alrighty, and now it's time for a good old-fashioned pros and cons list. And to start off with the pros, this coaster obviously specializes in really good airtime, and it's really varied as well. You have different strengths of airtime, different types of airtime, and also different durations. So you definitely get a good airtime mix in there. And when this thing is hauling, the ejector is top-notch for sure. This thing is decently intense when it's running fast. You definitely don't have a lot of positive G-forces pushing you down, but the ejector airtime is enough to rip your legs off, and you get some good laterals throughout the ride as well. Which brings us into our next pro, the whip. The whip in the S-bend section alone is enough to make this its own pro. That section is just so good. And lastly, it's fun, especially for the size. You gotta respect the fact that it does all this stuff in such a compact layout. Now this ride does also have a few cons, which the cons definitely are not as big of a deal as the pros are, but they are still there. And the first one obviously has to be that this ride varies drastically throughout the day and depending on what row you're sitting in. I think my afternoon back row rides were leaps and bounds better than my morning front row ride, so I have to take everything into consideration when I'm ranking a coaster. Both the morning rides and the afternoon rides kind of even out somewhere in the middle. And one more con, this ride is a bit rattly. I know I didn't really talk about it when I was going through the layout. There's not really one specific point in the ride where it's particularly noticeable. And the rattle also isn't necessarily uncomfortable. And you know, you don't have over-the-shoulder restraint, so you don't have anything to hit your head on. It was just a little unexpected on my first ride. So what rating do I give this ride? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where I think anything below 5 is bad, anything above 5 is good, I'd say I'm somewhere between 8.5, 9. We could call it 8.75. That's right in between. It's definitely a great ride overall, and if it didn't have those cons that I just talked about and just ran more consistently, I could easily give it a 9+. But for now, 8.75. Now, out of the 208 coasters that I've been on, where does Lightning Run rank? Well, I mean, it's doing pretty well. It's sitting pretty at number 27, which, when we look at the other coasters that I've ranked so far in this series, puts it right above Incredicoaster and right below Superman Ride of Steel. It's definitely higher thrill and more forceful than Incredicoaster, especially when it comes to the airtime and laterals, but I do prefer Superman because Superman does have sustained airtime over bursts of airtime, and Superman's scale and long ride duration are definitely a big plus as well. Now this is currently where this coaster stands, but as I ride new coasters, better coasters, it might fall. So if you guys want to check out the updated list of every coaster that I've talked about so far, go ahead and check out the link to my list in the description down below. But that's gonna do it for a lightning run. Thank you guys so much for watching. It is much appreciated. Have you guys ridden this ride? Do you want to ride it? Do you agree, disagree with what I said? Definitely let me know in the comments. Go ahead and like the video if you liked it. 2 thumbs down if you didn't like it. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. And share the video if you're feeling extra fancy. And make sure you tune in next time where I'll be talking about... So I swear I picked these at random. What are the chances?